Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Appreciate you joining me here for another week on the podcast. Before I get into today's episode, same favors I ask you every single week. Make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. You can also find the video version of these podcasts on YouTube, and you'll be able to find the video version on Facebook. So if you could jump on and you're consuming this content and you're finding some value from it, and give us a follow or give us a subscribe depending on the platform that you're on. And then on top of that, if you are able to share it around with anybody who you think might get some value out of what it is that I am doing here, by you doing those couple of little tiny things for me, you will be able to help me continue to grow the podcast and continue to make it a sustainable effort for me like it has been for the last couple of years. So I appreciate you as always for listening. So thank you for doing that. Let's get into today's topic. So the topic for today is getting your kids into sport. And the reason I am going through that is last couple of weeks I've been having a few conversations with people in person and also online around getting their kids into sport. And some of it has come about from my son last weekend at the time of recording this. By the time it's published, it'll obviously be a few weekends ago. He did his first jiu-jitsu session. And if you've listened to the podcast, you know jiu-jitsu is a hobby of mine. It is something that I've done now for just over 8 years, and it is something that I'm quite passionate and a massive advocate for everybody, including kids. Now, with that has come the questions, especially from some other jiu-jitsu dads, about getting their sons into it, but also too from other friends and other people that I've talked to about just getting kids into sport. And obviously there are massive benefits for kids doing sport. I think the benefits for them from a development standpoint are endless, not only physical development, but mental development. Things like team sports, the ability to work in a team, emotional development as well, having to come to terms with winning and losing. There are just so many benefits in getting your kids involved in sport. But sometimes it can be hard to actually get them to cross that barrier. And I've done an episode previously on what I feel is a good base for a lot of kids getting into sport from a physical standpoint. Two of those things are swimming and gymnastics, and both our kids have done those for their first couple of years of life, whether it be formally or informally. We're in a very privileged position where I have gymnastics mats and they're able to come out in the garage and swing on the rings and tumble and do a lot of stuff, as well as being able to swim almost every day. They're the two kind of physical foundations that I feel for a lot of kids when they're younger that they probably should start with. And then from there, from the point of view of, I wouldn't call them rules, but I guess the recommendations for sports or activities in our house, once they kind of got to a school age, like my son and then my daughter previously, they get to start to choose themselves what they want to do. And one of the rules within that, and this is more of a rule, is if you are going to do something, you need to commit to it for at least a year or a season. So depending on what it is that you're doing, you need to see it out for the duration of that season. So my daughter she's doing calisthenics, which is a combination of dance and basic gymnastics and things like that. So that's her physical activity. She has a bit more of a artistic personality, and that kind of suits her a bit better. My son, on the other hand, is a little bit more wired like me, and he's been at me for the last 12 months to do jiu-jitsu. And getting him into that wasn't something that I've forced him to do. It is something that he has wanted to do. And there are a couple of things looking back on it where it's like, I'm never going to force my kids to do a particular sport. I'm going to suggest that they do something, but I'm not going to suggest what it is. Am I pretty happy that he's chosen to do jiu-jitsu? In a way, I am. in the age group that he's in, it's more about physical activity rather than it is actual jiu-jitsu, which I think is a really good way of handling it. I don't think that he's old enough yet to really appreciate all the things that will come with jiu-jitsu. And for him, wanting to do, I wouldn't have been upset if he didn't want to do it right now, and it wasn't until later on in life that he wanted to do it, because I actually think for an activity like jiu-jitsu, waiting until he got a little bit older, even into his early teenage years, like around that age of 10, even a little bit older, it's probably going to be more beneficial for him than it is now. Now, do I expect him to continue it all the way through until that age? Absolutely not. I think he's going to want to try other things. I hope he's going to want to try other things, and I'm going to encourage him to do other things, play team sports and all of that, because for me, I didn't find jiu-jitsu till later on in life. I did a lot of martial arts growing up, did different forms of karate and kung fu and things like that, which was very helpful to me. But even then, a lot of that I didn't start doing until I was older than he is. But the fact that he's wanted to do it, I think it comes a lot from the fact that I do it. And there are a couple of things looking at it and having conversations with people where they've asked, like, how did you get him into it? And it's like, well, I didn't force him to do it. But looking at it, the very first thing when I feel it comes to kids doing sport, like, they have to want to do it, especially at the age that my kids are at. Because by wanting to do it, they are going to enjoy it. If they don't want to do it and they're being forced to do it, they're not going to enjoy it. I don't think there's any grey area with that. I think it's very binary when it comes to young kids. It's either they do or they don't. And if they don't want to do it and you're forcing them to do it, they are not going to enjoy doing it. And for me, if we use the jiu-jitsu example as an example, we can, like, if I'm going to force him to do it, but I see that the inherent benefit for him is probably not at the age that he's at now, but later on, there is the potential for me to turn him off ever wanting to go back to it if I'm forcing him to do it now. Now, there's going to be times where maybe he doesn't want to go and it's going to be a little bit hard, like from the point of view of looking back at his first session. Like, he had a few tough moments, but he still wants to go back, which is something that I'm actually quite proud of. Even for a 4-year-old, the fact that he wants to persist and he's showing a little bit of resilience is something that I think is fantastic. But there's going to be times where maybe he doesn't want to go, where maybe I've got to talk him into doing it. But if it's a persistent pattern of behavior where he doesn't want to continue doing it, knowing that the benefit for this particular activity is probably going to be later on in life, it's probably not something we're going to completely force him to continue to do, and maybe encourage him to go and try some other things. Because I don't want to run the risk of turning him off it later on in life when the true benefit is going to come from that activity. So they need to want to do it because that is going to help them enjoy it. And if they enjoy it, it's going to be easier for them to overcome the difficult times that are going to come with doing any sport. Like, one of the beautiful things about sport is it's hard. It's hard to get good at things. You have to put in the work. Now, depending on how athletically gifted your child is, they may strive in the early stages of doing a particular sport. There are, as bad as this may sound to some people, there are just some kids and people that are built different. Like, they are going to thrive at sports easier than other people. But the inherent beauty of sport is, regardless of who you are or how talented you are, there are going to come some tough times and some level of adversity that you're going to have to work through. And when the kids are young enough to start sport and they start doing the sport, if they're not enjoying doing the sport, they're not going to have the want or the need inherently to work through that adversity when it comes up. So I think they're the two biggest things, right? Like, they have to want to do it themselves. Not wanting to do it because you want them to do it really deep down inside themselves, they have to want to do it. And then secondly, they have to enjoy doing it, because if those two things don't align, there's no way they're going to want to stick to doing it. They're just going to fall off the wagon and they're going to hate doing it. And then if it's something like a jiu-jitsu where the benefit may be really later on in life, you're running the risk of potentially turning them off it later on in life and never getting them to go back to it when they will actually get probably more of a benefit from it. But then that's within the child, right? What can we do as parents to encourage them to do sports outside of just talking to them about it? Because this is a big thing, right? Like, I've noticed some parents, what they will do is they will tell their kids that they need to be active and they need to do sport and they need to do this and do that, but then they're not actually emulating it. And I think that's a big thing, like looking in my house, the fact that I do it plays a large part into why my son wants to do it. It also plays a large part into why our kids see it as normal to go and do things, to go and do sport, because they see us doing it. They see us doing our own activities. And not only that, they see us enjoying it. Not only do they see me going to jiu-jitsu, when they come to jiu-jitsu, they see me enjoying doing it. They see me smiling, joking with my friends, like having a good time while I'm doing it. And it's the same with working out. Like when I come out and I work out, like I enjoy it. They see me enjoying it, whether it be the enjoyment that I have or the change in demeanor I might have after I've done a hard workout. Them seeing you enjoy something will inherently feed their want to do that particular activity, because they're like, oh, dad or mum really enjoys doing this. And if they, one of the things, and this is something that I've been, I guess, dwelling over a little bit, especially as it comes to working out and coaching people and coaching parents. And a lot of parents want to set a good example for their kids. But then when they talk about working out, like they treat it like it's a chore. They talk about it like it's a chore and it's a bit of a burden and it's something that they have to do. Whereas if we can find some form of physical activity that we enjoy doing, whether it be, and it might not be working out, it might be going and playing touch, it might be, who knows, like going and doing yoga, whatever it is. If you enjoy doing it and your kids can pick up on the joy of you doing that, that I think is going to set the foundation for them to want to participate, not just in that activity, but participate in everything themselves and come at it from a place of joy and understand it, that this is something that I get to do, not that I have to do. And that's something that I think from the point of view of parents, where we can really make this mind shift or mentality shift to set up the foundation for our kids to want to live an active life, is making sure that they see us enjoying these things. Because if we don't enjoy it and they see us doing things, treating it like a chore and not actively enjoying working out, doing whatever activity it is that we want to do, they're not going to want to do it because they don't see it as fun. And kids will always, I've found, especially my kids, they will be drawn to do things that are fun because they're kids. They want to explore the world and they want to get the joy from the world and they want to get the joy from the activities that they're doing. So I think that's one of the biggest things when I've kind of thought about this whole situation and getting kids into sport, where I've gone, oh, like that's a really big thing. And I think it's not a really commonly discussed thing when it comes to getting kids active. It's like, firstly, what example are you setting for them? Like, do they see you doing activities, working out, whatever the case might be? Like, that's one thing. Setting the example is one thing. But the second thing is, do they see you enjoying it? Because if they're not seeing you enjoy it, they're going to probably shy away from it, because they're going to want to shy away from that something that they perceive doesn't make you happy, or that you are just doing for the sake of ticking the box. So in order to set your kids up to get them more physically active, to get them doing sports, the biggest thing I feel is you finding something that you enjoy to do. And there's a whole lot of parameters within that I think that you need to tick off if you don't have something right now, but just starting and finding something that you enjoy to do, and when you finished it, you come home lighter and happier and things like that, and they get to see you doing the activity and going through that state change where you're really enjoying doing that particular thing. That's going to help expose them to all these other elements that are going to come from them participating in different sports. And then on top of that, and probably one of the last things, is them exposure to it. Like my son with jiu-jitsu, and I know I keep coming back to this example because this is my lived example, is he's seen me do it. Like, he would come to classes with me and sit off on the side of the mats and just kind of hang out while I was training. It's that exposure to it. Like, he sees me doing it. But again, back to the last point I make, not only does he see me doing it, he sees me getting enjoyment out of it. And he sees me being consistent with it and getting growth, and we talk about that, and we talk about why I enjoy it and the camaraderie I get from it, and he wants his own experience of that. Because I do it, he's had exposure to it, and he's also seen me enjoy it. And that's the thing. And the thing is, then when they start to get exposed to different things as children, from an athletic development point of view, as they get older, I've already spoken about how I feel like swimming and gymnastics are a really good base for any child to start off with. But the more sports they can get exposure to, the better physical base they're going to have into their later years. Not only is, I think, doing jiu-jitsu important, or gymnastics or swimming, but then being able to throw a ball, being able to kick a ball, like all this stuff helps from an athletic development point of view, and getting your body connected to your brain and being able to move freely in space and being able to trust your body when you're in times of high stress. Like, all that matters, and that only comes from exposure. That development will only happen if they are exposed to a wide array of things. Specialization for kids shouldn't happen very early. This is a whole other topic that I will probably do another episode on if you're interested in it. If you are, send me a message and let me know what questions you have around that. But kids specializing too early is something that I see a little bit of in today's day and age, and I think it's right with danger. And a lot of people that I've spoken to from the US, especially in the college space, they are not actually looking for kids that are specializing in a particular sport too early. They're actually looking for multi-sport athletes, kids that have had a wide range of exposure, because they have the better base to work with. But I won't go into that right now, but that's something that might be of interest to you. And if it is, just drop me a message on the socials. But getting your kids into sport, I think it's so important for their development as a human being. I think there are so many benefits that they can get from being involved in sport, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. And the couple of things that I really want to hone down on to help get your kids into sport, from the point of view of them, the two biggest things are, number one, they have to want to do it, and number two, they have to enjoy it. Because if those two, if you're forcing them to do something that they don't want to do, and they're not enjoying doing it, they're not going to stick to it, and they're not going to get the true benefit out of that particular sport or activity. But then, looking inwards and looking at the example that we're setting, they need to see you doing something, that whatever that might be, and it might not be a particular sport that they're doing, but if they see you doing a physical undertaking, they will see that as normal, and therefore they will want to do more. But then on top of that, and a really commonly missed part, is not only do they have to see you doing it, but they have to see you enjoying it. So whether it's working out, whether it is some form of training, if you are constantly being seen as treating it like a chore and something that you don't want to do, or that you don't really enjoy doing, they're going to see that, and they're going to think that that's the normal thing that happens when I do a physical activity, like it's not enjoyable. So they have to see you to enjoy it. And don't get me wrong, some things that you're going to do from a training point of view are not going to be enjoyable, but more often than not, you want to enjoy it. So if they don't see that, they're not going to think it's enjoyable. And that is something from an example point of view that I think is really, really important. And then the last thing is exposure. They won't expose them to seeing you doing things, or expose them to just watching doing different things, because then they see it with their own eyes rather than just hearing about it from what you're telling them or telling them that it's important. So that's that. That's the episode on getting your kids into sport. Hopefully you found some little bits of value in there, or something that makes you stop and think and pause about how you're going to get your kids into sport. Maybe you're struggling to do it, and maybe it's something that you need to do a little bit different, or maybe it's just not the right time for them. Maybe they're not interested in doing it right now, and it will come at a later age. So everyone is different, every kid is different, but I do think there is a bunch of benefits regardless of the sport, by getting kids into it and consistently getting them to stick to and commit to something and work hard to get better at something. So take care, have a great week. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.